BTS News Today. The night sky over Seoul shimmered with city lights in anticipation. It was one of those evenings when everything seemed to pause for BTS. A night when the air outside Gocheok's Sky Dome pulsed with energy, army light sticks glowing purple like thousands of tiny galaxies orbiting one stage. Inside, cameras moved like restless eyes, capturing every heartbeat, every breath of the 7 men who had changed the rhythm of global music. And at the center of it all that night, Jimin stood, gentle, elegant, and unknowingly about to steal the world's breath away. It wasn't an ordinary show. BTS had returned to perform at a televised Seoul Music Festival, a night celebrating both artistry and intimacy, bringing live audiences back after long restrictions. Every seat was filled, every fan held their phone up high, and the atmosphere crackled with the kind of energy only BTS could create. Jimin had already performed like crazy earlier that night, and his voice still lingered in the air like perfume, soft yet intoxicating. The crowd had screamed until their throats burned, but the real moment, the one that would make headlines for days, was yet to happen. The stage turned dim. A soft piano intro began to play. On the giant LED screen behind them, a swirl of blue and white lights formed into what looked like a dream. The next segment was a collaborative performance, a surprise duet that had not been announced. Jimin appeared in a black silk shirt, unbuttoned just enough to reveal a sliver of his collarbone, paired with elegant dark trousers. His hair fell perfectly, glistening under the spotlights. He looked calm, but those who knew him, really knew him, could see that familiar nervous smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Then, the screen behind him shifted to reveal her, a professional dancer dressed in flowing white, her movements almost like smoke in the wind. The song that began to play wasn't one of BTS's classics, but a soft R&B track chosen especially for this moment. The choreography was intimate, expressive, and designed to tell a story of connection and vulnerability. As the crowd realized what was happening, the screams began to rise, echoing across the dome like thunder. Jimin took a slow breath and stepped forward. The dancer mirrored him, and for a few seconds time seemed suspended. Their movements were fluid, tracing invisible lines between them. The choreography required closeness, gentle touches, fleeting grazes, and emotional eye contact. But anyone watching closely could see it. Jimin's hesitation wasn't awkwardness, it was something softer, something deeper. Each time his hand reached out toward her, there was a millisecond pause, like his heart needed permission first. When his fingers finally brushed against her hand, he blinked quickly, almost flustered, and smiled. That shy, almost boyish smile that had melted millions since debut. The crowd screamed louder, sensing that they had just witnessed something genuinely real. For a moment, Jimin forgot about the cameras. His movements became instinctive, the dance flowing like water. Yet, whenever the choreography brought them close enough to touch, her face, her shoulder, Jimin's natural shyness peeked through. He'd glance away, grin sheepishly, or gently adjust his movement so that the contact was respectful, light, almost poetic. It was that gentleness that turned the performance from choreography into art. By the time the song reached its emotional peak, the crowd was silent, watching him lose himself between professionalism and emotion. When the final note echoed and the lights dimmed, Jimin bowed deeply. The dancer smiled at him, whispered something, perhaps a quiet thank you, and he nodded, still blushing visibly under the lights. Cameras zoomed in, and army screens captured the exact moment his cheeks flushed pink. Within minutes, clips were everywhere: Twitter, TikTok, Weverse. Jimin being shy, grinning, squinting, face fire. He's so respectful, OMG, gentleman Park Jimin, and he can't even touch her properly, pleading face trended worldwide. After the performance, the backstage corridor of the dome buzzed with excitement. Staff members and dancers exchanged knowing glances. Even they couldn't hide how adorable the whole moment had been. Jimin, on the other hand, leaned against the wall near the dressing room, laughing softly to himself. His stylist teased, "You were supposed to hold her hand, Jimin, and not hover over it like a butterfly." He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know, but I just couldn't. It's just weird to suddenly touch someone on stage like that," he said, half embarrassed. "I didn't want to make her uncomfortable." That answer alone showed why Jimin remained one of the most beloved idols in the world. His respect, sincerity, and soft-spoken nature have always defined him, even in a world where confidence and boldness often dominate. Later that night, During a short behind-the-scenes interview, Jimin was asked about that exact moment. The interviewer, smiling mischievously, said, "Jimin SSI, fans noticed you were very shy during the dance. What were you thinking?" Jimin laughed, covering his face for a moment before answering, "Honestly, I was so nervous. The choreography was beautiful, but I just kept thinking about how to make it look natural while still being polite. I guess I ended up being too polite." He laughed again, his eyes forming crescents. The internet exploded even more after that interview aired. Army flooded the comments with endless affection. "That's our Jimin front-facing baby chick. He's the definition of pure heart, respectful king. And imagine being that dancer, I'd faint." But the story didn't end there. The dancer herself, later identified as a well-known contemporary performer from Seoul National University of Arts, shared her thoughts in a separate interview. "Jimin was the most respectful partner I've ever worked with," she said warmly. "He made sure I felt comfortable the entire time. Before we rehearsed, he asked if I was okay with each move. He's incredibly professional and very shy, but in the sweetest way." Her words only deepened fans' admiration. They began compiling behind-the-scenes footage, zooming in on every glance, every subtle smile, every shy moment Jimin displayed. Hashtags like #ShyJimin, #RespectfulKing, and #SeoulStageMoment trended for over 48 hours as days passed. The Seoul performance became more than a viral clip. It turned into a cultural conversation. Even Korean news outlets picked it up, praising Jimin's professionalism and modesty. One journalist wrote, "In an industry where sensual choreography is often mistaken for authenticity, Jimin reminded us that sensitivity and respect can be just as captivating." Fans began editing slow-motion clips of the dance, pairing them with soft background music and captions like, "The man who touches hearts, not just hands." Within a week, the video surpassed 10 million views. Inside HYB headquarters, the staff couldn't help but smile. They knew how special Jimin was, but even they hadn't anticipated that one small, shy hesitation could make the whole world fall in love all over again. When Jimin later went live on Weverse to thank fans for the support, his tone was humble. Sitting casually in a hoodie, he smiled shyly at the screen and said, You all saw that, didn't you? I was so nervous. She was so kind and talented, but I really didn't want to do anything that looked uncomfortable. I just wanted it to be beautiful." He paused, giggling softly, his cheeks turning slightly red again. "I didn't know it would go viral. You guys really notice everything." The chat exploded with purple hearts, laughter, and affectionate teasing. "We love Shy Jimin. You're too cute. You made it even more beautiful," fans typed in floods of messages. Jimin smiled, reading them one by one, the corners of his lips lifting in quiet gratitude. But what people didn't see, what cameras never captured, was what happened later that night. When most of the crew had gone home, Jimin returned to the empty stage. The lights were off, but the echoes of the performance still lingered in the air. He stood there for a moment, looking out at the empty seats, his heart still racing from everything that had happened. He whispered softly, "I did my best." His voice was barely audible, but the sincerity in it could have filled the entire dome. It was that same humility that has always defined him. Jimin has danced before millions, sung in arenas across continents, and shared moments that transcended music. Yet, in the simplest gestures, like the hesitation to touch someone's hand, his humanity shines through most clearly. A few days later, during a radio appearance, one of the hosts joked again about the viral shy moment. "Jimin SSI, are you still shy even after performing for so many years?" Jimin chuckled, eyes glimmering. "I think I'll always be shy sometimes. It's part of who I am. But maybe that's what helps me connect with people. When I perform, I don't try to act. I just feel. And sometimes feeling means being nervous too." That answer struck something deep within fans and even fellow artists. Many praised him for being honest in an industry that often expects perfection. By the end of that week, the Seoul performance was already being replayed on multiple TV shows, analyzed frame by frame. Dance critics applauded the emotional authenticity of the choreography, noting how Jimin's gentleness gave the performance depth. His hesitation wasn't weakness. One critic wrote in the Korea Herald, "It was sensitivity, the mark of a true artist." And so what began as a fleeting, almost comical moment of shyness became a defining symbol of Jimin's artistry. Months later, when BTS performed again in Seoul for a charity gala, Jimin mentioned that night with a laugh. "You know," he said on stage, "sometimes one small moment can stay with you forever. That night I learned that even when you're nervous it's okay, because sincerity always shows." The audience erupted in applause as the lights bathed him in gold and purple. He smiled again, that same gentle, shy smile, and for a moment it felt like time folded back to that unforgettable night, because sometimes the most powerful performances aren't the loudest or the boldest. They're the ones where vulnerability quietly takes center stage, and for Jimin, that night in Seoul will always be remembered not for what he did, but for what he couldn't quite do, and how in that hesitation, he reminded the